this could be us. So back to what I was saying. Could be us.
Hello everybody, Romero XVII here, and today we're doing something a little bit special. This is the best of 3 between Crooks 209 and Marshall Mind. Crooks 209, well-respected player in the community, really good content creator, building up his brand day by day, and he's a very, very respected elite competitor. He has picked up some big wins on the esports scene and most recently joined the Dark Camp, one of the best camps on UFC 4 over in ESFL Gaming, and he's also part of a staff member there, so the man has a lot on his plate, and he's going against Marshall Mind. Marshall Mind basically being the grandfather of EA UFC's rise on YouTube. He's a very, very good individual and also a really, really great player, though he wouldn't tell you that himself. Now, those of you guys might see this and you're going to see it's pretty familiar. Well, it is the best of 3 between Crooks 209, the best Cub Swanson on UFC quote, and Marshall Mind's Jose Aldo, who is a pretty solid Aldo. Now, Crooks asked me to give this my own breakdown on what I see because a lot of people, they're aware that I have a certain attention to detail to what players like to do when I play to the best of my ability. So I've only watched this once, and it was when Marshall uploaded it on the channel, so I'm going to have fun watching this. They immediately touch up gloves. Now, one thing that you notice, Crooks switches to southpaw. There's a good reason why he switches to southpaw. Switching to southpaw gives you access to the open side, and especially with that southpaw body kick, as well as the side kick lands a little bit easier on an orthodox opponent. So Crooks, if you can target the body of Jose Aldo, it can do a lot of attacks on the cardio. Now notice there's a big whiff there on Marshall's end as opposed to him slipping, and also Crooks committed to a big slip as well. Now notice every single time that Crooks gets in the pocket, he plants his feet because he's expecting Marshall to try to sit there and trade with him. When he doesn't want to trade with Henry, he's going to back up out of range to try to force a whiff. And notice that as the short-term stamina is recovering, for both gentlemen, they have a really good eye for this. They're trying to target the body. Marshall seems to be pressing the gas a little bit harder than, I would say, earlier than one would expect. So soon, I guess he's trying to see what Crooks is trying to do early. But notice that Crooks, he's keeping his exchanges short. There's an occasional whiff here and there, but nothing too big. For those of you who don't know, the bigger the action, the more attacks is on the stamina pool. Punches generally take the least amount of stamina from the stamina pool, so you can afford to whiff a few of those punches unless they're coming off of like head movement and whatnot. That can tax you. Now, there's a beautiful check from Henry there, and that results in some good damage on the leg health. But also notice that body piece combination that Crooks 209 has thrown against Marshall. Now, Marshall does not like it when somebody goes to his body, so I do expect that Crooks will be aware of that and will try to preemptively slip that. And look at that. Crooks is checking Marshall Mind's Jose Aldo's leg kick. That's really good. He's kind of catching Henry here on the half beat because there's that little second of pause. You notice that Henry tries to reset and then he goes back into the pocket to fire off his offense. And when he fires off, he's going to back up. Notice that Henry backs up. Crooks is keeping an eye on that, and then he's looking to intercept Henry as he tries to close in the pocket. There, a little bit too late, and Henry meets him with a very solid switch kick. Goodly body hook from Crooks. Notice that Henry's definitely looking to try to hit the uppercut, and Crooks is trying to make sure that he's not in the pocket to be found when his short-term stamina is low. So it seems to be the damage is really close. You know, nice little calf kick from Crooks. Good switch kick. That switch kick is doing a number on the body of Crooks 209. Those of you who don't know, wow, beautiful slip counter from Crooks there. Henry's definitely not expecting that. Managed to knock him down to teeth there. Waits for him to get up to get into the clinch and rails him with a few strikes to the head. Well done there from Crooks. But notice that switch kick does a good amount of damage to Cub because Cub has a pretty low body stat. That dropped a bit. But look at that 4-piece from Crooks 209. He drops that 4-piece because he doesn't want his opponent to feel comfortable, right? If you allow your opponent to feel comfortable and you allow him to walk up on you, they're going to be comfortable in the pocket. Nice little Cub flare there with the spinning heel kick. And Henry, I can tell that he's kind of going forward into these strikes and it's making it hurt a lot more than it needs to. Does hold a nice solid stamina advantage. Definitely has a road to those switch kicks. There, Crooks does a good job of folding the body over so the switch kick can partially hit the shoulder so it doesn't do too much damage to the body. Henry's just to fake the lead low and then go for the body kick, but it's a little bit too close in the pocket and doesn't necessarily work as well as he would like. That's a very good first round. The damage trade-off, it seems to be a battle between the body health of Crooks 209 as well as the leg health of Henry, because Henry's had he has two kicks that have been checked, and that is a really good amount of damage, and it also reduces the power of Jose Aldo. And with Jose Aldo, his switch stance isn't necessarily that hot, so if you force Jose Aldo to switch to southpaw, although he still does have pretty solid power, it's nowhere near comparison to what he has in orthodox. And now notice that Henry's opening up now with the lead body kick. Beautiful spin kick catching Crooks as he's committing to the body shot. Does a good solid amount of damage. Crooks is kind of reassessing the situation. And this is one thing that I would say that Henry One thing that he could definitely work on, beautiful switch kick there. So I'm talking about what he needs to work on is not resetting, because he resets back in a straight line. There's different ways you can reset using that left stick, and he gets caught right there in the pocket, throwing the body kick from too close, and Crooks capitalizes. And when Crooks sees that you make a mistake, he's very tactical with his aggression, and he's gonna see, all right, where's he gonna block low, he's gonna block high. Now Henry, he's going to try to close the distance and force Crooks to commit to a mistake, but then he's throwing the body kicks in the pocket. And the best thing, you see what Crooks is doing here? He's pressuring with distance, not necessarily with strikes, but he's forcing Marshall over here to throw this body kick. He could be trying to throw a head kick, but because Crooks is not in the proper range, there's a higher chance of it forcing a conversion into the body kick. There, tries to go for a body team, he feints to try to draw reaction. Now Crooks is playing keep away. He's managing the clock extremely well with about 3 minutes left. He's ahead due to the rock and a good damage to the body, the lead body hook. Good pull, but no follow-up there from Marshall Mind. And that would have been a perfect opportunity to pull. A lot of people, when they pull, they generally go with punches. Something I like to do with all of those, I'll pull, and I'll try to go for the spinning back here, because now people expect that. And since a lot of players tend to pull counter people's pull counters, the really elite players, it's a good way to catch them off guard, even if you throw it once. The leg health is pretty low for Marshall Mind here. And Crooks, it's all about keeping the exchanges short. That calf kick does really good damage at punching range. It's a little bit of a shorter range weapon, and because he's staying relatively active with his hands, it doesn't give Marshall a good room to feel to kind of alternate between the high block and low block. He's not necessarily making the read. Oh, right there, you see that? Catches him on the startup, but good punishment from Marshall Mind. There's a sidestep, and it cuts a little bit on the head off of Crooks, and beautiful work there from Marshall Mind. But remember what I talked about, the power reduction that happens when your leg health is low. Oh, but beautiful check there, damages the leg of Crooks 09. It evens things out, but look, gets caught exchanging with low short-term stamina, and it takes a good crack just when things are seeming to go in Henry's favor. Tries to time an overhand against the leg kick, because he sees that Marshall Mind is throwing that leg kick expectedly. A little bit delayed on a little slip straight there. Gets caught on the edge, and that's 1, 2, 3. That's the kind of the combination of this fight that I'm noticing. That's what they're trying to plant and whip with. That's one of the best combinations you can do to try to intercept on the leg kick. But as I was saying, because of the lower damage from the lowered leg health of Marshall Mind, that is why he wasn't able to sit down Crooks a little bit earlier. That 1, 2, 3 is there. Henry's alternating between, he's going 1, 2, 3. He's using 2 straight strikes and a round strike. He's going 1 round strike to a straight strike. He kind of needs to alternate to the body just a little bit more. Headhunting a little bit too much, and that favors Crooks. Right, and the one other issue that I'm noticing for both gentlemen too, when they tend to go low, they tend to go low in singles. The only time I've seen that Crooks went doubled up was early in the round with a beautiful body counter. Now heading into the second round, it could very well be 1-1. Heading into that third round, this third round, because the damage is really close on both ends. And you can see he's trying to force Crooks to exchange on him, and he's having these preemptive set counters. But Crooks, he's comfortable. He's not going to commit to anything too much. Tries to catch him with a little cross counter, baiting Henry in. And it's, this is, to me, I would have this as 1-1, because there was a lot of damage landing on both ends, and I'll treat it as 1-1. Crooks feels pretty confident and knows that he's not allowing Marshall to push him back too far back the back line. That's actually the way that he's going to draw him in. It's a little bit of like a bait and trick, right? Like, oh yeah, I'm going to be back here behind the cage, and then he's just going to plant and rip. Good body kick. I'd like to see the switch kick come a little bit more off of Henry. He can't switch the stance of Aldo because the stance switch is so low. Checks the kick, but for some reason, it doesn't register. And that might have hurt Marshall there. It sucks, because that would have been great for him, because he could have potentially even got a knockdown off at the check due to the steel checks perk of Aldo. This third round is just really close. Crooks doing a good job alternating to the body, and notice that both of these gentlemen, they're very confident in the block despite them throwing a lot of combinations, because they're very confident with their slip counters. And just as I say that, Crooks lands a beautiful rear uppercut counter, dips down accordingly, and whenever you're facing against an opposite stance opponent, beautiful jab cross, rocks Henry there, and Henry has to fire back. Not necessarily too good there, but in open stance matchups, the rear hand, especially as a counter, does a lot more damage. It just hits a little bit different, right? It works as well in the same stance, but you can just set up so much from the open stance. And right there, that damage, the power is not there for Aldo with low leg health. He is hard rocked. It's really hard rocked by Cub here. And you can see that right now. Tries to go for the pull counter or slip counter there. Doesn't look too good. I think, no, and Henry survives. Impressive there, but this is what happens when the chip damage builds up. Early in the fight, it came down to Crooks landing a little bit of damage on the end of his combinations, right? That chip damage. And Henry would stay there even when his head health was low, and it results in him losing these exchanges. And he allows Crooks to kind of back up, recover his own head health, and Crooks can kind of take that more victory there. Notice that Crooks fired off there at the end of Henry's combination when his short-term stamina was low. He's aware of, all right, he needs something big here in order to win. And there's about 50 seconds left. So if you're Martial Mind, you gotta do something that's unexpected, right? A lot of people expect that, but just let's say that short-term gets caught with the short-term stamina being low. Crooks opts not to jump. I think he wants something flashy, and he gets the head kick knocked out. Beautifully well done by Crooks here in this first fight. So what can we take away from this? Well, the key thing is winning exchanges and knowing not to engage on your opponent's terms. So a lot of what Marshall was trying to do was trying to pressure Crooks to come back and fire at him whenever Marshall was in the middle of exchanging. Crooks would disengage whenever it didn't seem to like fit him, right? Like if Henry landed first, he's like, I'm gonna slip and get out of the way, and he would have these preemptively set counters in his back pocket in case he tried to commit to the rear strike. Now, if you counter the rear hand, because rear hand strikes cost a lot more stamina, if you slip counter those strikes as opposed to the lead hand strikes, your counters actually do a lot more damage. Fun fact there. It's in the stamina video on my channel. So they're going to go for a second time. Still going with Aldo. If I had to say any adjustment for Marshall to make against Crooks, it's focus on quality versus instead of quantity with the kicks. And even with the body shots, you can use all those body jabs. It's a safe probing weapon. You can use the body cross a little bit more. Keep it single shots and try to draw out these big reactions from Crooks. Because what he's doing here is that he's trying to engage in this firefight every single time. And what's killing him is the short-term stamina disadvantage, because Crooks is trying to make him brawl when he's at a disadvantage. Notice that Crooks is using now in the second fight that jab as a probing weapon to close distance, going forward and then dipping down to the body. Now he backs up out of range because Henry doesn't have a response yet. Now he switches over to southpaw. Now Swanson has 95 switch stance. Oh, he should not have pulled that body kick. Would have done a good amount of damage there. Crooks now he capitalizes on Henry's short-term stamina again and attacks the body. And because he's landing that beautiful counter, it puts him at a higher frame advantage to land those beautiful body shots, and Henry's unable to counter with the uppercut. And this is where Crooks really shines. He does a really good job of playing the Matador, especially if it's a best of three, and he knows, all right, this individual has to press the action in order to try to take this to a third fight. I'm going to sit here, I'm going to plant, and look, he checks the kick every single time. You have to, if you want to land quality leg kicks, you want to catch your opponent as they're throwing punches. Sometimes if you try to wait for the right moment, it just kind of makes it a little bit easier for them to check your kicks. Especially when Crooks is doing such a good job defensively and gets very sneaky with that lead calf kick. Little slip cross. Henry dodges very well there. Going to the head, and that was a perfect opportunity to go to the body. Gets caught with the slip cross to the lead hook. See these set counters? This is stuff that you have to drill. If it's the same thing you guys need to take from this. That those are drilled counters, that's drilled reactions, because most of the player base do respond in the way that Martial Mind's responding with those straight strikes in the middle. And now because he's constantly throwing out the slip straight, it's going to make Henry a little bit more cautious about trying to lead with the straight punches, and it's going to let Crooks flow a little bit more and Henry to be a little bit more hesitant. Now he preemptively slips, but it's not firing off the offense because now Crooks is making a fight on his terms, getting caught on the spinning punches. There's a jab, lead hook, cross, the uppercut, beautiful strike there. Oh, but still going to the head, goes to the body a little bit too late. There's a preemptive slip counter, and if there's one thing, if you're Jose Aldo, right, and he gets his leg kicked again, and his leg is hurt, you got to lead with those round strikes. Not only does Aldo have a beautiful jab, but that lead hook is one of his best weapons, and you could double up with that lead hook into the body. So it's just too much of a cycle combinations here I'm noticing from Henry, as opposed to just changing up his offense, changing up his leads, and still kind of coming onto that straight line. Angling off with the body jab would be good. Fishing for like the hard shots, it's not necessarily going to be to the best of his merit. And notice that now Crooks is fighting the fight on his terms. Notice that after he finishes exchanges, he's trying to back up out of there, relying on the high block, only moving his head when he feels like it is necessary. And there's a lot of these dips there, kind of keeping his head off the center line to make Marshall feel uncomfortable. If I'm Marshall Mind here, keep in mind that Crooks keeps dipping off to his lead leg side, so a lead high kick will work really well there, but he just keeps leading up the jab, and he's going back and forth. This is like a real big thing that happens with players. And what happens is, ooh, beautiful 1-2 head kick, just doesn't go through the guard enough. The guard of Jose Aldo is pretty strong, but it's when you're fighting like you're taking turns. well, it's kind of like when you're fighting to each other's rhythm, kind of going like you go, I go, you go, I go. That leads to exchanges being much more even than they're supposed to be. And then whoever's the better counter fighter, or whoever's going to be better at predicting at what's coming next, that's going to determine, right, who wins the fight. So again, same story, right? Stamina advantage for Marshall, but very slightly. And the other thing is that his leg health is low on that right side. Beautiful dip to avoid a counter. Look, he sees that Henry is going to go for like that slip cross. The body straight has good evasion to the body when you time it correctly because you're level changing. Catches. Henry about to slip. Beautiful frame trap from Crooks 209. Oh my God. Now what happened? Now how did that finish happen? Well, one, he timed that Henry was going to try and do a slip counter and he led with a lead hook, right? That's exactly what he did. Then Henry's guard was a little bit low. His head health was low. And he tried forcing the exchange instead of, at that moment, when your head health is extremely low and your guard's low, head movement and blocking. You have to alternate between the two of them. Not firing back there was not the answer. And as he put himself against the cage, he got frame trapped because it's just a constant barrage of strikes coming. You have somebody with a stamina advantage, head off advantage. That is the opportune time to strike. Crooks recognize that. Close distance, you start planting and ripping the combinations. And in the middle of trying to just fire back, instead of taking the proper defensive course of action, that's what led to Crooks pulling away the W here. And